As I mentioned, this is the second webinar of the Migration and Inclusive African Growth session that is focused on diasporic entrepreneurship. Before I begin, a few housekeeping information to share with you all. This is to let you know that the event is being recorded and it will be available to view again at the end of next week. We will share the link on one of our social media platforms. We also have language interpretation for Portuguese. We have Flavia and Wagner on board. If you want to select this option, at the bottom of your screen, there's an interpretation tab. So please click on it and then select the language you prefer for the interpretation. Also, please follow us on Twitter. Craig is about to post the link for the Twitter feed for Open University, but also you can sign up for Open University newsletter. And Craig is actually going to send that through on the chat. So this session is actually a follow-up from the discussion yesterday on inclusive growth and migration, which was facilitated by Professor Mohan, where we had discussions from Dr. Dylan Puratha of World Bank and Professor Heaven Crawley from Coventry University, as well as Oliver Bakewell, Dr. Oliver Bakewell from the University of Manchester. And some of the interesting discussions that were held during that session was on that they picked up a few issues on diaspora. And picking a point that was raised during the discussion, looking at the diaspora tangible and intangible ways of engaging and interacting with the country of origin, the tangible ways were more linked to the financial remittances, and while the intangible links were actually linked to knowledge and skills transfer, as well as networking and investment within the country of origin. And this is more, it's looked at more within the lens of social remittances. And within the context of the MIAG project, we hope to understand the sectors that diaspora engage in terms of entrepreneurship, whether their contribution leads to inclusive growth. And this was done within the context of Kenya, Mozambique, Ghana, and Nigeria, where we had varied experiences and interpretations of diaspora contributions. In today's webinar session, we aim to have an active conversation about diasporic entrepreneurship from the perspective of our panelists today. We'll take about 40 minutes or so to listen to their interventions, and you're invited to raise any questions you may have. We have a Q&A tab at the bottom of your screen, but you can also post your questions in the chat box, and I'll raise them at the end of the interventions from all the three speakers. So now I'd like to introduce you to our panelists for today. We have on board Abiola George, who's a member of the Network for Migration Research in Africa that is based in Nigeria. And she's a postgraduate researcher in the Development Policy and Practice Group at Open University. She returned to academia after 20 years working in finance, project management, and human capital development, serving clients in the private and public sector in Nigeria. Her research interest focuses broadly on issues on women and development in Africa. We also have on board Stella Opoku Owusu, who is the Deputy Director of the African Foundation for Development, AFORD, with 18 years of experience in the development sector working with diaspora and migrant communities. Stella oversees AFORD's work on diaspora and migrant investment and their contributions to enterprise and employment. She advises governments across the world on diaspora engagement policy and engages diaspora migrants and INGOs through training and speaking engagements that discuss policy development and how to create an enabling environment for diaspora action for job creation in Africa. She was nominated as a co-chair for the Global Forum for Migration and Development, the GFMD in Quito, Civil Society Days in 2019, and was recently elected to the board of BOND, which is the UK Network for International Development Organizations. So welcome to you, Stella. And finally, we have Tapia Musheri, who is an economist with over 10 years of experience, specializing on diaspora, migration investment, trade, and business development fields. He has worked extensively both in the private and public sector, where in the private sector, Tapia has been instrumental in the policy design, formulation, program coordination, and promotion of diaspora migration investment and trade initiatives. Tapia has also published journals and conference papers on diaspora engagement and migration management, and produced several position and concept papers that have contributed to the policies and economic development in Zimbabwe and the region. Tapia holds an MSc in international trade and policy and trade law from the from Lund University in collaboration with Trade Policy Training Center in Africa. He also has a bachelor's in commerce in business management and economics and a bachelor of commerce honors in economics from Rhodes University in South Africa. So I welcome the panelists today and I invite Abiola to make her intervention. Welcome, Abiola.
Thank you, Linda. If I can just have a thumbs up that I'm audible. Thank you very much. So welcome everyone to the day 2 of the MIAG webinar series. I'm excited to be presenting some of my research in diaspora women's entrepreneurship from the perspective of Nigeria. Now, just to position this before we start, and I'm happy that I'm going first because I guess I provide sort of like a narrow window into some of what we'll be speaking about today, but this is not, this is work in progress and sort of what is coming out and what I'm seeing from my research. And as Linda said, my name is Abiola George. I'm a postgraduate researcher at the Open University and a member of the MIAG team. So an ancient proverb says, where 4 or more Nigerian women are gathered, there's an entrepreneur in their midst. And I totally just made that up. But depending on who you look at and what reports that you read, in the Nigerian context, it is estimated that approximately 40% of women are entrepreneurs. And it's one of the highest rates in the region and I dare say in the world. However, the picture starts to shift when you look at what kind of entrepreneurship that the women are engaging with. And that is when you see the divide. With an estimated 80% of the women participating in micro businesses in the informal sector, which really means they're not registered. And this runs the gamut from the petty trader to people who might even be running digital businesses, but not registered formally. And again, working with the percentages, only about 20% of these women are in the formal sector. And, I try to put an infographic to sort of give you this contrasting view. So the 80%, as I call them, these are the women that we hear the most about in development literature. Then often the targets of empowerment projects by governments and development actors, people trying to empower them, people trying to elevate their status out of poverty. And this is really important work. I do not sort of in any way cast any shade on that. However, there is also on the other side, the 20% who are skilled female. I put skills again in parentheses, and the expression high value has also been used. Again, I'm not comfortable with all these terms, but that's what's in the literature, so you permit me to use them. So they're doing sort of the more high value entrepreneurship, and they're becoming more and more prevalent in the tech sector, which for the longest time has been male dominated, and some people would even say is still male dominated. And these women are essentially innovators. And while the 80% have been the target of interventions and funding and everything, these women, on the other hand, have struggled to fund their businesses and to raise and to scale. However, they've recently been the target of venture capital incubators, accelerators, people sort of seeing the potential in their businesses and trying to then see how they can help the women, but also benefit from these businesses. And in the Nigeria space, from my research, I found these women in finance, tech, digitizing, thrift, which is like the collections that the women have traditionally made for years and years, trying to reach the unbanked with digital savings, mobile money, women-only financial services, and hubs as well, where they can sort of come and not just learn how to get finance, but also how to make sure that these finances are being used for the purposes which they are being sourced. Also, I found them in health tech, I found them in tech education, from the projects directed at enrolling girls in tech, learning management systems, mentoring, and all these other spaces that are listed here. And this is all quite interesting because the timeline for some of these businesses emerging, I would say on the outer end, and these are maybe some of the people that they will consider themselves early innovators, about 2013, but really more around 2015, where the technology hub in Nigeria started to enjoy some growth, started to enjoy attention. However, we found that women's participation, has been lagging, but it seems like SIF is in an upward trend. Now, because I came into this as a migration researcher, my lens for sort of looking at these women was from the perspective of the conversations on migration and development. And over the years, the emphasis has shifted from looking at migration as a burden on the host country and as a drain on the home country to, how there can be mutually beneficial things coming out of migration. And so the conversation at some point then started to turn towards entrepreneurship. And really what I would say are the pivotal cases are the Chinese and Indian migrants in Silicon Valley. And they are attributed to setting up and also the success of Silicon Valley. And they're recently in the news with travel bans and all of that. There were lots of newspaper articles that I found saying, there's no Silicon Valley without these migrants. And also, these same migrants are then attributed to being a part of the success of making the technology hubs in their home countries the new space where people could outsource labor. But the jury is out there, because some people would also say that there were already the environment was already enabling that sort of activity, and perhaps the impact of these migrants were more to amplify what was already in place and open perhaps to more international attention. Also, some of the conversations around knowledge transfers, like has been mentioned earlier yesterday and also by Linda, and it's cast as this migrant entrepreneurs are bringing knowledge, skills, abilities to home in order to help develop the businesses back home. And so this is sort of the lens that I went into my research with. And so the question that I wanted to, I guess, query, are diaspora women playing a role in the inclusive development of the tech services sector in Nigeria? And by diaspora women, I sort of included both circular migrants, transnationals, return migrants, and even in some instances, people that maybe had migrated seasonally for education. Maybe they'd come to get a master's degree or first degree or whatever it is. So I included these women, because if all the information online is to be believed, and also what the literature seemed to be suggesting, especially again quoting the Indian and the Chinese example, also coupled with the fact that the technology hub in Nigeria is also developing. Looking from the outside, it looked initially like it was all due to these returning women who were maybe different from the women who were back home doing all of making all of these innovations and amplifying the sector. And from what is coming from my research, I would say yes and no. Yes, the diaspora women entrepreneurs seem to be better at, I've called it, onlining their profiles and tapping into international networks that amplify the work they do. And to give you an example, and with some of them, their work actually, you can track the substance, and for some you can't track. You can track a really beautiful online profile with membership of the right boards and the right foundations, doing empowerment in Nigeria. However, tracking the work on ground is a little bit more difficult, and I found that was sort of prevalent with some of these female entrepreneurs that were being celebrated as this diaspora women coming to shake up the sector and make it more inclusive. And also, on the other hand, I found that like I said, there was an existing or nascent technology hub starting. So coming in in the beginning of something, it helps to sort of amplify one's role in it, I guess. But I would say that there were pre-existing local conditions that were critical to some of these businesses coming from abroad. And, because I found several notable female entrepreneurs in the Nigerian tech space that have never emigrated out of Nigeria. So migration was not a factor, or that I found that was important to for them being part of this space that one would say was non-traditional, and that all the conversations seem to suggest. And so, just because I know Stella is coming, and what is this without a good policy recommendation, I would urge caution when it comes to those narratives that venerate the knowledge transfers from abroad. And there's nothing bad with that, because there's a lot that has come that is good. But from the perspective of governments and policymakers and development actors, there is, I feel, in my opinion, and please feel free to correct me, that there's a lot of attention that needs to be paid more to enabling local potential to innovatively solve local problems. And with that, I'd like to hand this over to Linda, I think, then to Stella. But thank you very much for your attention. I look forward to your questions at the end. So that's me. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Abiola, for your interesting presentation. I think that's a very nice segue to head over to Stella, who's going to give us some interesting insights from AFOD. So welcome, Stella.
Thank you very much, Linda, and Abiola. Thank you for your for the presentation as well, and for putting me right in the middle of that one. Let me just share my screen quickly, and then I'll get into it. And I do want to respond to Abiola's last point as well. Can everyone see my screen? Yes, okay, great. So I think actually just to follow on, just so that we don't actually, just so I'm able to connect the thread. So I think the points that you made, Abiola, absolutely about the fact that solutions have to be local. I think that's absolutely true. Where the diaspora come in, whether it's entrepreneurship, whether it's transfer of skills, for us at AFOD, we always say it's added value. And we always caution as well that it's important not to see the diaspora as the panacea to development, right? It's actually about added value, and it's also about how you use that resource as well, and how you enable that resource as well. And I think that that's important. So I think there is definitely a role for the diaspora, but it's about that collaboration with resources and knowledge on the ground, as opposed to the diaspora on their own and local on their own. And together, it's much stronger, at least from the work that we've done. So thanks for bringing that point up anyway. So just to start with, and just to give people a quick sort of background into AFOD before I get into the discussions as well. So AFOD is the African Foundation for Development, which was established in '94 with a mission to enhance and expand diaspora contributions to Africa. And our priority areas are around enterprise and employment, on decent job creation, basically. So the way that I wanted to look at this topic, really just looking at inclusive growth and diasporic entrepreneurship, from the background paper that MIAG had put together, I noted this point in particular around the fact that, and it's in quotes, that inclusive growth remains theoretically underdeveloped, and empirical studies lack evidence or concentrate on isolated cases, right? Now, it's very much the same with diaspora entrepreneurship in practice as well. From diaspora direct investment, which we used to refer to the other side of what you refer to as foreign direct investment, right? there is almost no data, if you like, in terms of what this actually looks like and what impact it actually makes on the ground. We know that the World Bank have indicated that about 20% of remittances, for example, go to some form of investment. We understand as it goes to small businesses, it goes to property, but it's about as much as we actually understand. There isn't that sort of granular data. And of course, if you compare that to FDI flows, which is always monitored, there's always information about where it's going. It's not exactly the same with Diaspora direct investment. And of course, the diaspora also contributes to entrepreneurship through skills, as we were just talking about, and through financial investments as well, and philanthropy. And again, there's very, very little data on it. I mean, there's some case studies. The work that we've done, we've been able to collect the data on that, but of course, that's not enough in understanding exactly what is happening on the continent. Just to move the slide. So in terms of addressing, I think what were the two key points in relation to this discussion. One was around how do the diaspora or how do diaspora entrepreneurs operate in ways that are more locally inclusive or locally embedded and inclusive. And then the second one was around the effects of diaspora entrepreneurs in terms of their engagement with policy frameworks, and how do policy frameworks also attract or promote the contributions that the diaspora make, or engage them to make more of their contributions to growth and development. So on the very first one, there were three points that I wanted to make, and the first one is around the fact that in terms of diaspora entrepreneurs being more locally inclusive, I think we start on the basis that the diaspora already make a contribution to the continent, right? And we also know, for example, that the African Union have said that actually, in terms of remittances, it's like a social, like welfare for the continent, and that in itself is already embedded in the continent. And so you're talking about in 2020, in spite of the projections of 20% decline on remittances to the continent, it was actually around 3% decline, and it was at around 82 billion or so. And actually, there are also estimations that if you were to put together formal, like remittances, informal, and in kind, you would be looking at something like $200 billion into the continent. If you work out that 20% investment, which has been indicated by the World Bank, you're looking at around 40 billion and so forth. So for us, we start on the basis that, of course, apart from like remittances, there's also the skills transfer we've spoken about. There are all sorts of other contributions that the diaspora make. And then we also see the diaspora as social investors. So from the work that we've done, a lot of entrepreneurs go into this space, the diaspora go into this space or are already in this space because they want to make a difference. They want to make a social impact. And so the programs that we have designed are really around harnessing this social investment that the diaspora actually bring. And this cuts across skills transfer and finance and assets and time and all of that the diaspora bring with them. And then the third one is around motivations. And I'll skip the slide to a couple of slides here, which really also shows you or tells you the story about the diaspora's contribution actually being inclusive in what's already going on. So the diaspora have a real stake. It's often because they already have like family or their first generation, whatever the connections are, but they have a real stake. And for a lot of the diaspora, engaging in this way is also a pathway for staying permanently engaged, or in some cases, a pathway for basically like for being able to go back in the long term. For some, it's about an opportunity to maximize assets. They have property, they have like networks and so forth. And again, it's that belief in African agency as well. And always, it's that emotional connection with the continent. And that cuts across all generations as well. There are some differences when it comes to young diaspora, or to second generation, third generation, and first generation diaspora. But just to go back here, so I think these motivations as well, in terms of that sort of longevity and that constance as well, which actually I should have mentioned in relation to remittances, that sort of consistency of remittances, I think also makes it locally inclusive. We know that there are projections for FDI to fall, and there are projections for like remittances to go up, and we've seen that happening over the years. Now, in relation to the second part of the question, which is around how to engage or attract, diaspora contributions. It's a lot of this is really down to diaspora engagement policies and the will also to make this actually happen. It's about the implementation as well. What you find often is that the policies, as we can see, a lot of countries are of course developing their policies. They can see the benefits, but they are unable to take it forward. There seems to be, I don't want to say, I'm trying to be quite gentle with this, but there seems to be a difficulty, let's put it that way, a challenge with actually developing this and taking it forward and building on initiatives that already exist. There's also, of course, the factor of having an enabling environment as well for doing business. We know in Africa, 2 countries are in the top 50, and it's Mauritius and Rwanda who are in the top 50 out of the 190. And in both countries, you can set up a business in under an hour, basically, right? Which is much quicker than in other countries, and it's very effective as well. And we need more like that. And then, of course, the lack of structured diaspora products as well also hinders, this possibility of having inclusive growth. This table really just shows you the existing diaspora capital, which you have at the top, so remittances, intellectual, and so on, which we've gone through. And often the diaspora, they make these contributions on an individual basis. And you find the same thing with entrepreneurship as well, with diaspora entrepreneurs as well. There isn't that sort of joint upness either. And it's about providing the support and the programs and the products for them to be able to do this together collectively, so that we can see more of the multiplier effect. So in terms of Afford's work specifically, what we've done to respond to diaspora, in like motivations and diaspora contributions with a focus on entrepreneurship and investment, and also to respond to the challenges that diaspora entrepreneurs face, which are also in some cases very, very similar to the SME sector overall, right? Because the diaspora often make an intervention within the SME sector, which is the size of what they do. So it's about access to finance, it's about transnational business development support, it's about accessing information, and so forth and so on. And to do this, to do this and to address this, we set up what we call the ABC, the Afford Business Center, which provides business development services for diaspora entrepreneurs and strengthens the business and ecosystem on the continent. And the focus is really around creating decent jobs and solving a socioeconomic problem, and also ensuring that these businesses can be financially sustainable. So the design of the program is around engaging diaspora entrepreneurs and businesses. And these diaspora entrepreneurs are often registered in Europe, operating on the continent in partnership with African partners, I have to say, specifically for Abiola. Or in some cases, they've actually registered businesses on the ground as well that are already operating, right? Because we totally believe also in developing institutions. It's not enough to provide or to go in and do the business, and then when there's an issue, when there's a COVID pandemic, everybody leaves, right? So it's actually about building that capacity also on the ground. We've also extended this program to local entrepreneurs as well as of last year. So it's diaspora entrepreneurs as well as local entrepreneurs. And then the program also incorporates diaspora volunteering as well. So again, it's about recognizing the skills that the diaspora bring as well, and ensuring that we have a structure through which they can also transfer those skills. We also provide a match fund of 80-20, whether it's a grant or whether it's a loan. And again, this is recognizing that the diaspora already make their own contributions financially, and that without us, without the work that we're doing, they will continue to do it. The only sort of the difference is that it doesn't make the social impact that we would like it to make. It doesn't make the social impact that we all believe it has the potential to. And then, of course, the program also provides transnational business development support. So just to give you some 3 quick examples as well, we supported this business in Ethiopia a few years ago, and we provided them with £25,000. So this was a lady who was based in the UK. Her background is in the health sector, and her vision was to create an affordable home aftercare service in Ethiopia, which she managed to do. And you can see some of the social impacts there as well. She added value to Ethiopia's economy because this was not a sector in Ethiopia. It was all very underground. What she did was to work with the ministry itself to produce a policy that would oversee this area of work. And so by doing that, she actually managed to create a sector in itself. And then the sustainability in that is that because she's based in the UK, what she did eventually was to do a partnership with another business who now have 70% of the business, and it's run basically locally. So she does not have to be there. She has trained 100 nurses who've gone on to train others. She's trained the partner as well, and they have a very good understanding of how the business works. And then you've also got this business as well. Again, another UK young diaspora who was based in Manchester had a business where he was providing, he was using coding to develop apps for businesses in the UK. And he then decided to expand this business into Nigeria a few years ago, and we supported him with a grant as well, and he matched that. And at the time when we completed the program in 2019, he had created 13 new jobs. We caught up with him this year. He's expanded to 23 people in terms of jobs. And he's also established a tech hut as well for schools. He's very keen in engaging females in particular into this area of work as well. And so you can see how, and also actually in terms of those who work for him, he's trained them as well and upskilled them as well. So he recruits them, but then he provides the upskilling and the training as well for them. And then this last one is, this was one in Zimbabwe where they were very focused on supporting farmers in, I think it was in Matabeleland. And they were interested in supporting them with logistics for them to be able to move their products from the farms to the markets. And so they provided transport for them. They provided the trucks for them to be able to do that. Now, they actually, in supporting them, they got to the point where that support was no longer required because the farmers were not able to produce any more, not because they had hit their potential, but because they have a number of challenges. This entrepreneur actually just relocated in December last year, and guess what? She's bought a farm where she's going to set up a business that enables the farmers to access tools and resources that they need to help them to maximize their potential, okay? So that's a brilliant example of how, in terms of longevity, in terms of inclusivity, the diaspora actually basically just make this impact. So last couple of slides, just to give you a picture over the last few years, the work that we've done. We've put in about £1 million of investment into job creation in the continent. Now, even though we asked for 20% from the diaspora, they actually ended up putting in something like 50%. And in so doing over the years, in some of the countries that we've worked in, we've created about 1,000 jobs. And we've also worked with about 200 diaspora resource persons who have used their skills to support businesses in Sierra Leone, in Ghana, in Benin, and in other places as well. And so the last point to make really is that for us, in terms of how you increase inclusive growth through diaspora entrepreneurship, we need more structured products to make a wider social impact. We need to increase the momentum and have a rich and creative combination of financial and social resources as well. So it's not just the cash, it's also in-kind resources. We need to incentivize to build capacity, enable and scale up the diaspora themselves. And then of course, all of this can also lead us to having the data and empirical evidence that we need. And as they say in the property business, you rinse and then you repeat it. So you have the data, you do it, you clean it out, you learn the lessons, you repeat it. And I'll stop there. I feel like I've gone on for quite a while, but thank you very much, Linda.
Thank you so much, Stella, for your intervention. As you can see, that's Stella's contact details if you want to follow up with her. I also like to thank you for the music interlude. It was a nice touch to it. I can hear some music in the background.
I am so sorry. I'm actually in the Dorchester where I had an event this morning. So I stayed here to work and there is music in the background.
No problem. We were able to hear you very clearly, but thank you so much for your intervention. I think I will not try and reinvent the wheel with what you've said. You've said actually some clear points, and I'll raise them in the question and answer session. Right now, I want to invite Tapir to make his intervention on this particular topic. Welcome, Tapir.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate, and thank you, Stella, for setting the ground, as well as Abiola. I hope my screen is so visible. I hope you can hear me and can see the screen. Thank you so much. Unfortunately, I will not be able to provide some musical interlude like Stella did, but I'm sure that you flow together. And thank you so much for the issues that have been raised by Abiola, where she was talking about having local solutions. And you will see how that connects as well with my presentation, together with my colleague Stella, where she was indicating a number of interventions that we need to put in place for us to be able to mobilize and be able to harness the potential of diaspora entrepreneurs. So in a nutshell, I'll look at those who we call diasporic entrepreneurs. I'll look at what triggers them, look at a bit of some patterns, especially from my hometown, Zimbabwe here, then constraints to what will really hinder diasporic entrepreneurship to thrive, then of course give interventions that I might propose. So what you notice that the World Bank has given an estimate that says about 400 billion has been found to be cash or savings in the bank accounts of diasporians and in countries of destination. And that speaks to us as diaspora savings, which is potentially money that can be used for investment. And back home here, the Reserve Bank of Zimbabwe in 2021, within the monetary policy statement, has indicated that in 2020, diaspora remittances amounted to $1 billion right here in Zimbabwe. And what it speaks to is the potential. If we're to use diaspora remittance as a proxy of diaspora contribution, we are talking of it as a potential to what we can use to propel the economy. But the challenge that has happened over years is that much of the remittances have been for consumptive purposes, have been used for social protection purposes, and hence the need to move to a stand where we talk of financing for development. And you will also note that there have been so many challenges around international financing. And as it dwindles, what then comes into mind is the proposition by my colleague Abiola that says, let's then try to look at local solutions to be able to solve this financial in quotes crisis. And of course, the Ethiopians, I was privileged to go there on a look and learn visit one day, and we learned that they regard the diasporas as locals, not as foreigners. And in that case, we are regarding them as a solution to the local problems that we also face. And now one would then ask, what sort of entrepreneurs do we have within the diaspora? Some have become necessity entrepreneurs, those who, for some instance, could not find a job, and then they say, I'll rather venture into entrepreneurship. And in this case, they are looking at their pocket and these have no much effect on economic growth as much as we look at issues to do with development at a macro level. Then there are some who are opportunists, or some who look at opportunities, and some who are daring, so daring to take risks, and they recognize and take advantage of market openings and they move in. And these create huge economic opportunities and profits for themselves as well as for their countries. We also look at retaining diaspora entrepreneurs, those who are about to come back for good, who are saying to themselves, we now want to return back home after our tour of duty, after our time of working in the diaspora, and we want to be entrepreneurs. So they establish businesses back home so that when they get back home, they have a soft landing. And of course, this talks of their emotional attachment back home, so they invest back home. Then of course, we have transnational diaspora entrepreneurs, these who are ever moving between the country of origin as well as the country of destination. And of course, they are abreast with what is happening in other countries. And they might even have dual investments, both in country of origin as well as in country of destination. And one then will ask to say, what is it that pushes these people to do that? Some is purely pecuniary reason, that they just want some financial gain out of it. Some, of course, they will do it for public reasons, to say they want to assist the well-being and development, of their country of origin. And so they'll do a project, they'll come into investment, they'll come into entrepreneurship, because they want to really give a mark and do something to be remembered for. Some do this surely for private reasons, so as to say, probably to assist their families, and they will make sure that they start a business for them so that they reduce the pressures on them in as far as economic challenges are concerned. We've also noted that some do this for professional reasons. Some have been in a certain trade, and what they would ultimately do is to say, because of what I've gained, I have to then invest in this. And what we've seen is that, probably I can give an example of one Zimbabwean diaspora based in Qatar, who has set up an international school that is doing very well, because he and his wife have served at one time in the US in the educational sector. They moved to the UK before moving to Qatar, and they have been in the educational domain. And now that they are in Qatar, they then decided to set up a school back home. So looking at their professional background, they have then said, let's keep it up along that lines. Then looking at the historical trends in terms of what has been the pattern in terms of these people who have been developing themselves into entrepreneurs, we will note that in a study that was undertaken by certain individuals in countries such as the UK and South Africa, they were able to interview as well, to send their questionnaire to about 260 respondents. And of these 260, about 30% of them indicated that they were investing back home ever since the time they left Zimbabwe. And what is being noted also is that from those, in terms of looking at the age, we have noted that about those in the age range of 30 to 39 were the ones who were investing so much. And also it was noted that those in the income scale of around above 20,000 to 30,000 annually were also the ones who were investing highly. But what we also noticed that those within the range of about 30,000 plus to 40,000, and within the age range of 30 to 39, were also investing heavily. So just to give you that highlight, to say, it may, the iron of it could have been that one would expect those who were retiring to be the ones investing more. Unfortunately or unfortunately, those are not the ones, but rather those in the age range of about 39 for some reasons. And what we also note, when one looks at the sectors that were being invested in that era that was under study, I think that is from around 2007 getting to close to 2010. One would then say that about more than closely 35% of the respondents were investing in immovable property, that is looking at the property business, like Stella was giving signals to say it's one of the areas as well as Abiola was talking about the same. So these are the people who are really buying properties, that is your houses, commercial properties, as well as vacant stands. And this is one of the key areas that we've seen. Number one, specifically because they want to be established when they come back, but secondly, that they have a reliable source of income. And secondly, what we note is that the second sector that has been so much, that had so much traction was the motor and transport business, where back then the issues of commuter or minibuses were so much on demand, and the diaspora had access to probably second-hand vehicles, and so could send these back home easily and be able to be in business. But also because of the challenge that the National Railways was facing, there was so much movement around the issues of the heavy goods trucks, and so the diaspora were investing so much and heavily in that area, as well as in parts shops. And what has been the trend like really going into the future, or where we are and where we're coming from? You will note that from where we are coming from, there was a time of economic turmoil, which saw many of our people becoming economic diaspora, as I defined them in one of my publications. And these people, they were professionals, and some of them engineers, teachers, and nurses and doctors. And what you would see is that using their professional background, some would then start businesses around the areas of their profession. But we also noted at some instance and at a certain era, irregular migrants, people with unskilled workforce, those who would go into the diaspora, particularly in the region, without documentation. And for them to get or to secure good jobs, it was difficult. And what they would do is, once they work for a short time in a fairly decent workplace, they would do their savings and come together, then start a very small project and become entrepreneurs. And of course, some of them have become what we have defined as necessity entrepreneurs. And what we've also seen is that there are people who would then assimilate. If we were to follow one of the publications that I've done, I was talking about the life cycle of a diaspora. And within the life cycle of a diaspora, what you will also note is that one starts from, if it's an economic diaspora, we're looking at a person who is looking for a job, is job hunting, comes into getting a job, doing documentation, getting into a place, trying to settle down, assimilates and integrate. And as a result, when they do that, they're able to do some savings, and they can start a business. That has also been seen. That's at times when you look at the time frame by which one has been settled in the diaspora, it gives you an understanding of probably an appreciation of whether they were able to save and be able to do something in as far as investing back home is concerned. But we've also seen that trend that I talked about when I was talking about the returnee diaspora entrepreneurs, who were saying that these are people who are preparing to come back and want a soft landing, and as such, they do come into business. But we've also seen that people go into entrepreneurship or into business, specifically both in countries of origin as well as in countries of destination. So the trend that was in the historic aspect or in the historic time seemed to be proceeding, where we see property business also taking the lead. People have also now moved into agriculture, where they have seen that not only should they supply in the country, do business in the country of origin, but they also do business in the country of origin to supply to their country of destination. That trend has also been seen. We've also seen people moving into mining, transport, as well as social sectors. I've given an example of education and also health. We have a Zimbabwean diaspora based in the UK, where she's a lady who has started an ambulance service business, and we've seen such growing big. There's also the issue of people doing business in the diaspora themselves or in the countries of destination, where we have seen the services that are demanded by the diaspora being taken on board. We've seen people doing a partnership with the local life assurance companies, insurance companies, so that the people, if in the event of any demise, people are able to be catered for in as far as insurance companies are concerned and life assurance companies are concerned. So we've seen that trend also growing, especially nearby here in South Africa. Events management, we've seen that in a number of countries, when our Zimbabwean diaspora are looking for for services, we seem to see that events management companies are being run by our own diaspora because they see an opening in that regard. And those become also opportunity entrepreneurs. IT is also another key industry. I'll try to be quick then. Then looking at the constraints, what is it that at times constrain the diaspora? One of the key issues is the crisis of trust and confidence, which has been highlighted by many, be that they have tried to do business with relatives and they've seen relatives not being accountable. They've looked at other institutions that they looked at and hoped they would support, being the banking system or other systems. They looked at the policies, whether they were favorable, and they've questioned whether they can do business back home. They've looked at the macroeconomic fundamentals at times, and they've said that the business environment is not so lucrative, and that has really restrained them from doing business back home. There have been also barriers to investments to do with regulations. There have been also lack of information on opportunities as well as procedures to how to do business in a particular sector, and lack of incentives as have been highlighted by Stella, and lack of appreciation. And of course, some, which is the key killer thing in every country, of course, rent-seeking behavior when one stops of corruption, which increases the cost of doing business. And of course, at a personal level, people in themselves, some are just afraid to lose out of what they would have invested and saved. And of course, the complacence that comes with a satisfying job. Some more high earners, I would say, do I really need one? And these are some of the things that we will get to appreciate, that people become reluctant then not to invest. What are the solutions that we then are proposing? My colleague Stella spoke of the need for data. I'm of the idea, and I want to concur with her to say that when one looks at the global compact on migration, objective number one, in terms of the need of disaggregated data, and this is what we're advocating for, to say if countries, policymakers are to really harness more out of diasporic entrepreneurs, one of the things that is key is to have an ability to do mapping of their diaspora, to be able to appreciate the profiles of the people, what their motives are, what the type of entrepreneurs they are. Are they just convenient or necessity entrepreneurs, or are they opportunity, and are they returnees, or are they all sorts of things, so that you are able to know what sort of intervention is necessary. And of course, we've had some monitors at a global level, the Global Entrepreneurship Monitor, that should help get indicators of how to be able to also get data. Issues around the Diasporic Entrepreneurship Survey, investor perception survey, which can be instituted at a local level to be able to understand why people invest and what will be necessary for them to sustain their investment. Then issues around the diaspora mapping and profiling. Then of course, enabling environment is very key, where you're looking at inclusive policies, starting from the national development plan of any country. It has to speak to the issues around the diaspora, and as well, particularly diaspora entrepreneurs, or the so-called diaspora development investment, that will give them also the drive to participate. There's also need for entrepreneurship monitoring. This talks to the capacity building that my colleague was also talking to, where we need to make sure that we groom these entrepreneurs to become the multinationals of our countries. Regulatory framework has to be relooked at, revisited, and reformed. Financial packages, we need to really have a deliberate purpose as policymakers around financial packages that are lucrative for the diaspora. For example, when we're having a discussion around sustaining remittances beyond COVID, one of the issues that was raised by the Reserve Bank of Zimbabwe was to say, we want to challenge our Zimbabwean diasporas out there to come up with money transfer agents of their own, so that they are able to determine the cost of sending money. And these are some of the things, and they were saying we are ready to give incentives for as long as you come up with these things. So what we're saying is it's necessary, it's important for us to be able to come up with packages. There was one time the issues of matching, fund matching that my colleague was talking about. At one time where we had a policy where we said, if you are to remit your monies back home, 5% of whatever you've remitted will be given back to you, but in local currency, 3% to you, the recipient, and 2% to the money transfer agent. And that was also one of the packages that we were saying could be considered by other countries. Then targeted public policy, public procurement measures, where we are saying there has to be a deliberate move to say at a government level, can you not co-opt the diaspora in your procurement process? I know back home, in terms of trade, we had one diaspora from Botswana was awarded a tender to provide or to supply irrigation material to the southern part of the country. And this is such an advocate that we're saying, if the diaspora can be included, that inclusive aspect is very important. Then innovative financing arrangement, we talked about that. There's a need for broader communication where we are looking at, are we telling the people, are we heralding what is happening around the world in as far as our people are concerned? As you look at the PowerPoint, that's a publication by one private sector player who heralds success stories of Zimbabwean entrepreneurs. One of them, you can actually read that says, from the streets of Kadoma, which is a small town here, to running a multi-million business in London. What we're saying is, are we sending the message out there of what other people are doing that should inspire the rest? And we are looking at, are we also communicating the policy changes that are happening, the business environment? Are we communicating that which the people needs to know, which will help them and share success stories so that they become very, very engaged? One of the things that is also important is engagement and partnership. And some institutions back home have done a very good job to complement government effort. And what they've done, these are the Chartered Institute of Accountants, who are also more like the consultants who are approached by diasporans when they want to invest. We have the Securities Exchange Control Commission of Zimbabwe. They have also been a partner, as well as the Zimbabwe Investment and Development Agency. The three of them came in on board and went on a round robin trip where they were doing virtual meetings to be able to mobilize the diaspora to invest back home and share with them the investment opportunities around at back home. So this is one aspect that we want to encourage, to say there could be partnership that can be done. Also, what has been done, this essentially what I have been sharing is also key when you look at building trust and confidence. And what has also been done, you will note, is that the IOM has also done a very come up with a very good program, which has been assisting a voluntary return and reintegration program, where you see those irregular migrants who want to come back home with dignity, and they are supporting them to start small businesses of their choice and help them integrate into society. So that is very vital. And then lastly, the last intervention is to do with recognition. On one of the study visits that we undertook to the Philippines, we learned that they've had a very good awards for outstanding Filipino individual and organization overseas. Those who have contributed, those who have done a very good thing to stand in for the country, to do great things and great exploits out there. And this that I'm talking about, that you see also right here, is the Zimbabwe Achievers Awards, which is run by this gentleman here as his own initiative, and has done so well. It now has got chapters in essentially all provinces and all continents, sorry. And what we have seen is that they recognize and honor the exemplary achievements of entrepreneurs, those who have done the country proud by representing the country. They are having national brands out there, and have become a national pride. So recognition of great sacrifice and dedication to national development of such, one of the things that it does, it inspires people to continue. And so when you look at it, one of the questions is whether you and I will not think that if we are to have these entrepreneurs, will this not help in our development quickly as a country, as a continent? And believe you me, diaspora entrepreneurship will foster business development, job creation, and innovation. But the question that one will still have for you is to say, how will one strike the balance between the local entrepreneurs and the diasporic entrepreneurs, and that's the question that I also want to pose to our participants, that you ponder on that and you see how we can strike the balance. Otherwise, from me, thank you so much, Linda, and thank you, listeners and participants. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much, Tapiwa. I feel like you were in my head. I had that last question in mind and I was going to pose it to you, but I'm glad that you posed it. But thank you so much for that very comprehensive presentation. I felt like it was more of a conversation that was linking all the topics from Abiola to Stella to your presentation. I have many questions, but I'm going to open up the floor. I think there's some questions already in the chat. Maybe Giles, if I can invite you to ask your question so that at least we can keep the conversation going on this interesting topic.
Yeah, thank you to all the panel. Fantastic set of papers and provocations. I guess one of the things I wanted to ask was in terms of our project, I'm being very selfish now, but the project we tried to look at comparatively across different types of migration and diaspora groups in terms of the extent to which they may or may not bring about inclusive growth. And one of the hypotheses was that different groups have different types of kind of capital, whether that's human capital, financial capital, or social capital. And in terms of diaspora groups, do you think because they are members of a diaspora that they have any advantages vis-a-vis other potential migrant entrepreneurs when they return to their putative kind of homeland? Or is it a hindrance, the fact that you've been away, or you're second generation, you've come back, or are there certain advantages that brings? And that's kind of a general question, I guess.
Thank you so much, Giles. I think we'll do a round of like 2 questions, and I can invite the speakers to answer to each of those questions. There's actually a question from Ben. Quite a long question, so maybe it would be better for you to sort of like condense your question. I think it's addressed to Stella on how to raise the raise the 1 million investment for Diaspora. So maybe I can invite you to rate your question verbally, Ben. I don't know if Ben has access to the mic. Maybe I'll just ask the question anyway. How did AFOD raise the 1 million it invested in diaspora businesses, and was it for diaspora contributions and or external partners? What was the experience of raising these funds, and what did it suggest about how diaspora are seen by potential partners as contributors to entrepreneurship and development? Maybe let's start with that, and then we can actually follow up with the rest of the question. But maybe I can invite the respondents to actually answer Giles' question, and then Stella, you can actually answer Ben's question. So should we go according to order? Viola, if you want to answer. And then we do.
I think to Giles's question.
We can't hear you.
Done it again. So in response to Giles's question, what I found in the Nigerian context, again, sort of bounded by my research, is that it's almost as if there's a parallel situation going. So people come back home, they see an opportunity that they're able to exploit, and they're able to put the financial resources or the network, or they already have the network, so they can pick up a phone and call somebody. They just go ahead and do it. And the advantage that they would have, it's possible that somebody else who's not from the diaspora might have it, especially with the contacts and everything. But I think people just sort of get on with it and are not participating in sort of the theoretical discussions about if and they can do this and what they can't do. I get a sense that people just get on with it. I'm not sure if that sort of speaks to what Stella's experience is as well.
Thanks, Abiola. So just to follow on from that point, and also in answer to Giles's question as well, before I come to the second one from Ben, it's that classic relationship between the diaspora and the continent where often, and we like to use this a little bit as a joke, as in to to stop the phone calls that come at night to say, I need money. You decide to put money into a business, a small business for a family member, right? Now it fails and they come back, and what do? You put money into it again, right? Now that is about yes, there's a motivation, but it's also the fact that the diaspora take this risk, whether they know it or not themselves, much more broadly. So it's not just about the entrepreneurs. They take this risk because they are already invested. They have a stake in these communities. They have this connection that they know will be there, forever. They are thinking in the long term, I might want to return home, etc. And I think that's what makes the difference between the diaspora as an entrepreneur and other entrepreneurs who are going in, because the diaspora will stick around regardless of what happens. And that's what makes the difference. And that's the risk that they are willing to take. So you've got that longevity, you've got that sort of sustainability in terms of the connection, you've got that sort of consistency as well. And then just moving on to Ben's question. So we've engaged very broadly, of course, with different institutions and foundations and so on, and we've had support with with the work that we've done in terms of job creation from foundations like Comic Relief, but also from government institutions like the DFID. When we previously had a program that was basically focused on 4 countries. This was Nigeria, Sierra Leone, Rwanda, and Zimbabwe. And that funding actually came from Comic Relief and DFID at the time, who were doing a match fund and a program on diaspora contribution to the continent. We've also had support. The pilots that we did previously was actually supported. This is the Ethiopia one, was actually supported by a foundation that's actually led by a diaspora person herself. And then the recent one, which we've just started a West Africa program, which is Benin, Ghana, Nigeria, and Senegal. And this is funded by the SDC, so the Swiss Development Corporation. So I should actually be changing the 1 million to something like 2.5, basically, because we wanted to raise more money to put into this. And I think some of that comes from some of the international policies as well on the EU side that are also focused, of course, on it's two-sided. On one hand, it's about stopping migration, but on the other hand, it's also recognizing that job creation is important, and therefore they have programs that basically support, some of what we do. So this one that we've just started is funded by the SDC. So this is the Swiss. But I also see that in terms of the points that Ben was making was also very much around scaling up. And you're absolutely right. What we found in this area is that in as much as we go in to support with tens of thousands for businesses to scale to a certain sort of like level, they're still caught within this missing, like middle space. And that's where there is a challenge in terms of how you then support them further to scale up. And what we, in terms of lessons that we have learned as well, is that the program that we've had so far, we've been providing grants to businesses. So in a sense, the grant goes, it doesn't come back. So now what we're but what we are implementing going forward is actually doing incentive grants and loans, right? And the whole idea is about sustaining this area of work as well. And to be honest, from the engagement that we've had with diaspora entrepreneurs, where, as I mentioned, we asked them to put in 20%, and actually in terms of the program overall, it's been more like 50%. There is an appetite for, true entrepreneurs in a sense, whom we're also able to provide the capacity for them to be able to utilize loans effectively or different investment structures. And sometimes the grants are actually not ideal for the businesses either, because grants are delivered in a certain way, and whereas investments and loans can be much quicker as well, as opposed to grants. And I think they also kind of recognize that as well. I'll stop there so we can move to someone else. But I hope that answers the question though, Ben.
Okay, thank you so much, Stella. Tapiwa, do you want to provide a response to Giles' question?
Would you kindly repeat it again? I got it, but I want to be sure if I got it well.
Thanks, Tapu. Basically, do you think being a member of a diaspora, when you return to your notional homeland to make some investment or set up a business, does being part of a diaspora bring you some advantages, do you think, compared to, say, if you're a non-diaspora investor coming in? And if so, or is it actually a hindrance? Sometimes it's just there's too much kind of cultural baggage or whatever, family pressure or whatever. Or do you think, because what we're trying to understand in MIAG is, if you're a Chinese investor coming into Ghana or you're a Ghana diaspora, what kinds of businesses are you setting up? What kind of, growth are they generating? And so do you see, if you're sort of thinking comparatively, do you think being part of a diaspora brings you some advantages when you do that, or is it more mixed? I don't know. Thank you.
Thank you so much for giving that clarity. So I think it all depends from which standpoint one is. So we can look at it from a government perspective. Surely the government wants people with resources, and as such, having the diaspora come through will be a welcome initiative. I will tell you that we have been going on diaspora engagement drive. Recently, we were in the UAE, Dubai, where we engaged the diaspora, and recently in at the climate summit, where also on the sidelines there was an engagement of the diaspora, specifically to say that you have a role, and we are moving with the theme that we're saying diaspora championing development. So if it is from a government standpoint, it is to mobilize them. So having them to come back, it's a welcome initiative. But when we look at it from a local's perspective, be it local private sector players, we are saying those who feel challenged to say, why are you giving this preferential treatment over us? We have been here resilient and all that thing. So when you look at it again from the perspective of, say, locals, but family members, like Stella also pointed out, for them it will be a welcoming thing to have a business in their own right associated with it. But the question that comes is to say the management aspect of it, the issues around sustainability, without the owner, without the visionary, without the funder being there presently always. But of course, thanks to the advent of IT, people can still be checking on their operations now and then through all sorts of means. But the other question that comes to play, or the other case that I can bring, is during our study tour to Ethiopia, one of the things that they do is they give the diaspora an advantage. What they say that if you are coming into the property business, so if you want to erect skyscrapers within the Addis area, you have to show up about, is it 25% of the cost? You have to bring in 25% of the initial cost of the initial capital that is required. Then local banks will then be able to complement you with loans that will be able to help you complete those buildings within the CBD. And this is one initiative then where we see the diaspora getting an advantage to say you can invest in property business, specifically with a minimum amount, but of course being complemented by the banks. So in some instance, like I have said, it then depends from whose standpoint are we saying. But also if we are to look at the diaspora versus other migrant groups, definitely the diaspora have always been viewed as from a positive perspective, be it from the country of origin or from the country, from the host country. But when you look at migrants per se, they are viewed as a security threat from across the board, and hence diasporas have got a better standpoint in either accessing loans or doing a number of projects or getting reception in different countries. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Tapio, for the comprehensive response. We have less than 15 minutes, but there are two questions that have been raised by the audience. One is from our research partner, Inez, in Mozambique. And she wanted to know the extent to which each country a country's diaspora matters and how it fits into development agendas. I think I'll pose that to you, Tapiwa, because you mentioned that as an aspect of part of your presentation. And then the other question is from Michael. So he has a question saying, so any diaspora that does something in their home country is an entrepreneur and is contributing to development. And based on what you're witnessing, what types of entrepreneurships are contributing to the most in terms of the diaspora? So maybe I can pose that question to both of you. And if you can give us a quick response, maybe 2-3 minutes, that'll be great. Thank you. Maybe you start back to front, Tapiwa.
Thank you so much. So in terms of whether the diaspora matter, indeed they matter. You recall from my presentation, I indicated that just last year, they brought back home in excess of 1 billion. That is a significant, if one is to look at it from the contribution to GDP, that would be very significant as well. So they do matter. And what has been done to show that they matter? In the National Development Plan of the country, there is mention of the diaspora and what the government intend to do for the diaspora. Then also, we recently had a workshop where we're looking at the devolution agenda. And of course, we were saying diaspora is agents of devolution, and we are encouraging hometown associations so that they also go there and make an impact. But we're also looking at what the government can do for the diaspora. And we are looking at initiatives around appreciating them, emulating from such countries as the Philippines. I would say that. Then the second question was to do with
the second question was linking diaspora to national development agendas.
Okay, then there was a talk of, there's a question around which sort of entrepreneurs, diasporic entrepreneurship do you see taking more of the lead? So I would say that if one is to look at it, looking at the life cycle of a diaspora, one will need to settle in the country of origin, and at times attend to problems and settle down, attend to problems back home, establish. And when one is well settled, they're able then to do investment. And what we have seen is the major investment that has really been taking place is that one where we've seen opportunists or opportunity entrepreneurship, but the big one is one where we have seen also the retaining diaspora entrepreneurship, where most of the people want a soft landing. They want the same comfortable life when they get back home. And as such, they know pretty well. I've got a case in point of a friend who has already said he has sent trucks back home. He's already ventured into truck business, but also he's pursuing some PhD, and he's saying, I also want to come back and be a consultant. So you want to complement the two and be able to say, I'll be able to be comfortable. So the retaining diasporic entrepreneurship is one of the types that we've seen also taking the lead. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Stella, maybe you can give a quick response because I've seen there are two questions that have been posed.
Okay, no problem. So I guess just very briefly on the first one about doesn't matter, I'll just say very, very briefly, as in, do the diaspora matter? The diaspora, as far as we're concerned, are the largest investor into the continent. $82 billion, even from last year. It's more than foreign direct investment. It's more than overseas development assistance that's going into the continent. So they are the largest stakeholder, essentially. And so absolutely, they do basically, like matter. On the second one, which is about is every diaspora an entrepreneur? Not necessarily, but every diaspora, in terms of the definition of the term diaspora itself, which is about the fact that they are of a heritage of the African continent and they contribute back to the continent, basically makes them a contributor to development. So in terms of the definition itself, yes, all diaspora contribute to the development of the continent. The types, so you asked a question around the types of entrepreneurship that they are contributing to. I think one of the points that I'd made was that we see a lot of the diaspora, all of the diaspora pretty much, really interested in making a social impact, whether that is around creating jobs or whether that's around supporting young people or supporting, you know, young girls, etc. And so what we've done is that when we put out a call for applications, we don't limit the sectors. We pretty much open it, and we open it right through from education to health to all those other areas that you would probably see more within the sort of charitable scope. So we open it out wide. It's IT, it's agriculture, everything. And what we look for is innovation. We look for job creation. We look for making a social, impact, and of course for ensuring that the business will also become financially sustainable. So I think that's an area where you will find a lot of diaspora entrepreneurs in, and what we support them with is also about understanding how they embed that social element into the business, because often what you will find is that while people might describe themselves as social entrepreneurs, the link between the two is often not very clear. And so we support them with actually understanding exactly how they do that and ensure that in as much as the social side is kind of leading, that they're also looking at their business model and ensuring that it is also sustainable.
Okay, thank you so much, Stella. We've just gotten less than 10 minutes and we have 3 questions posed. So I'll try and summarize them. One of them is looking at wondering if there's been some attention paid to the environmental impact by the diaspora. Another one by Richard has been raised. Do you see any evidence that environmental sustainability is becoming a driver for diaspora investment? Maybe I'll pose that to Stella, the 2 questions. Actually, the first question I'll pose to Tapiwa, and the second question I'll pose to Stella from Richard. And the final question is from someone called TFB, and they're wondering if there are any projects that you consider is a form of cooperation. So that one I'll pose to Stella. So very quick responses in less than 1 minute or 2. Thank you.
Okay, on the environmental side, we actually last year started a project with SNB in Ghana who are focused on green economy. And this year we did a research on diaspora investment into green economy. And this year we're actually piloting actual diaspora investment into the green economy space. So this is something that we're also starting to focus on a little bit more and engage in diaspora in this area. And honestly, there's so many diaspora who are in this space as well around environmental, like the impacts around green economy, climate change, etc. So we're engaging them much more in this area as well. I think I pretty much answered that question, haven't I? Was there a second one?
I think you've answered the question. I think the second one I posed to Tapiwa about the impact of the diaspora, I think on the environment, the first question.
Okay.
Yeah. Tapiwa?
Oh, yes. Just to say that what we've also noted that most diasporans, apart from what I indicated that we have seen much of the investment going into from returnees, but I also want to support what Stella has said that looking at what we experienced back home, we had Cyclone Idai, which hit the country and across the region. We've seen diasporans also coming through so very well. So for me, what I've seen is more of the investments has been around the social aspects as well, as much as people are coming from the region. But when we come to the issues of the environment, the green investment, not so much has really been showing up, but I think that's a precise answer to say not so much of it from the environmental aspect.
Thank you so much for all your responses. And I'm sorry for piling them in the last minute, but this conversation can keep on going. And I hope to have a further dialogue on this. But I would like to thank all the panelists for their presentations and interventions. Abiola had to drop out last minute, but we appreciate her contribution. As I mentioned, this recording will be available with the other recordings next week, at the end of next week, so you can be able to view and share with other people who have not been able to participate. But thank you so much from me and the rest of the team from MIAG for participating. And we hope to have this dialogue on another platform. I'm sure it's going to be an ongoing conversation. So thank you so much and have a good afternoon and evening, I guess. I don't know what time zone everyone is in, but thank you so much.